Cool. It started really fast this week. This is Geekout episode 55. I am Russell Hawley, and this week we have Ryan Whitwam, who is also a writer for Geek.com and tons of other places. And we're joined this week by Avast CEO. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Vincent. I want to know all about you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm with Avast. Name is Vince Steckler. I've been running Avast for about 5.5 years, and Avast is actually the world's most popular consumer security product. So we currently protect about 220 million computers around the world. It gives us probably about a 20-25% share of all the consumer computers are protected by Avast.
Cool. So I wanted to bring you on today to talk maybe not directly about your products, but about kind of the security landscape as a more general topic.
Absolutely.
Because we've got some funny things going on right now, kind of across the entire world when it comes to personal data, and it's raised a lot of questions about who we can trust, from a bunch of different perspectives. But I think maybe the more interesting question is how we can trust them, not necessarily who we can trust them. What specific responsibilities can we assign to these different organizations? Maybe an antivirus company or an anti-malware company or a cloud services, cloud storage company. As users, I wanted to talk to you about, what responsibilities are realistic to assign to these companies versus what we should assign to ourselves as the user.
Sure. Where would you like to start on that? Just open-ended?
Yeah, I mean, so it seems an awful lot like, there's a kind of a general sense of outrage when it comes to, data being consumed and collected from any organization. If someone reads on the internet or hears on the news that one company in particular has been taking all of their user data and selling it to marketers or using it to gather information for analytics, there's kind of a mild sense of outrage, and obviously there are more extreme cases in either perspective, but it seems like that's the starting point. At least it seems like it to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those tough things because those cases of outrage pop up now and then. Sometimes they're overblown, sometimes they're not. But in users' just day-to-day usage of the internet, they're kind of making a conscious or an unconscious trade-off between basically convenience and price versus what they're giving up to do it. For example, Gmail. Gmail is hugely popular. Do people make the connection that they're getting advertisements that may be somewhat related to the subject of their emails? Because the subject of the emails go into all those advertising engines to figure out what to serve up. As they're searching for things on the internet, do they ever make the connection that advertisements that they're seeing popped up have been based on what their searches may have been the day before, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, or incomplete sales transactions? And for the most part, I think people understand that, but they're kind of making this unconscious or subliminal trade-off that the value that they're getting from the search engine or their email is worth giving up that privacy data. And I think where they get upset is where they haven't really made the connection. That is, they haven't received some value in exchange for the data that they gave up. That is, that the data was given up without something obvious coming in return. But when you get right down to it, there's not a whole lot of privacy on the internet. Every place you're going knows your IP address. They know where you're coming from. They can correlate that with demographics, what websites you're visiting, can tell advertisers what your political leanings are, what your age is, what your sex is. The search engine companies know everything about you. The ISPs know everything about you. So kind of privacy is over, and I think the question really is, what's the user getting in exchange for when they give up privacy? And are they willing to lose a lot of that convenience if they want to keep their privacy?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I don't know if you heard the recent news about Facebook acquiring the company that makes that app Moves, which was an activity tracker, and that company actually said in their FAQs that they wouldn't share any data, but buried in their terms they said if we're ever acquired that could change, and now it's come out that they're probably going to give all that data to Facebook. I mean, do you think there's a way that companies can like protect themselves legally and still be upfront with people about this?
Well, the problem is people are giving up all of their data rights on basically those click-through agreements. And virtually no one reads those click-through agreements. There was a case a couple years ago with, where one company, for fun, kind of spruced up their agreement and put things in there, for example, that the user of the software agrees to give up their firstborn to Satan. And they got basically zero complaints on it because no one ever read it. So, the companies are, legally fully within their rights on that. And from a corporate governance, you would probably expect that they put in a qualifier like that. But I think the truth is, consumers not only didn't read the fine print, but they probably didn't read the big print that said that the data wasn't being used. We all install software, we see those splash screens, and we just hit continue, continue, continue because, we all kind of expect that we know what's in there already. And, the user's alternative on this is to stop using it. Once again, it's a trade-off that it's free, and in exchange for getting that free service, there's something that's going to be done with what you're doing. I think that's also one of the big questions on WhatsApp. I mean, with Facebook paying $18 billion for WhatsApp, how are they going to get that $18 billion back?
So, from your perspective, and you're far from being alone in this, it is an appropriate position to start off when you first, sit down to the computer with two opinions in mind. One is that you have accepted, that your agreement with each one of these companies is an exchange, is a financial exchange in one way or another, be it an actual monetary exchange or a data exchange, and that every time you try to adjust that, you're giving up some level of comfort in exchange for that kind of reclamation of privacy.
Well, you are, because people have gotten used to kind of everything being free. When I started in the PC business, we had software stores all across the U.S. We'd go into Egghead Software and browse thousands of titles, most of which were pretty expensive. Those stores don't exist anymore because all the software is on the internet and it's basically free. But still, the people who have made it have to get their money back somehow, and they have to generate a good return. So there's kind of a implicit exchange of value, that they're giving the consumer something of value and the consumer is giving something back, which tends a lot these days to be tracking data, personal data. And I think most users realize that when they click those agreements that, yeah, I'm not getting this absolutely for free. There's something they're getting back for me out of it. And they do that trade-off in their mind as to, is it worth it or not?
Okay.
So then, like, a product that you would actually pay for, I mean, presumably people still need to be wary of that. Like, you can pay for, a cloud storage service, like you can pay for Dropbox, but you can also use it for free. But I mean, their model is getting you to pay for it. They're not necessarily just after a bunch of tracking.
No, right. They're trying to get you to pay for it, and so some of the earlier models of cloud storage, all the data that was sent to them was encrypted, and the user held the encryption key. So the company that was storing the data couldn't see inside it at all. There wasn't any privacy concern whatsoever. But those models were pretty expensive. The new models are much cheaper, and data's in the clear, and there's something that could be done with it. I know when I used to be with a company where we had a cloud storage business, we one of the reasons we had it encrypted is that we didn't want to know what was in it, because once you start hosting data in the clear, you also got to start worrying about subpoenas or whether people are storing illegal content, be it pornography, ripped off videos, etc. And you got a massive, massive issue if you're trying to handle all of that. So, there's good reasons for encrypting the data beyond just the user privacy. But a lot of it these days, yes, is unencrypted.
So, I wanted us to circle back just a little tiny bit to the notion that people are generally aware that there's some kind of exchange going on when you are using a free service, when you sign up for it, when you use it. Do you think that users would respond to a tool that maybe popped up and filled them in, just kind of made it clear that maybe it was third party or maybe it was from the companies themselves, like maybe it was from Google or from Facebook, that said this is the thing that you're doing, that just kind of spelled it out to them?
Well, I mean, there's some of that out there. For example, on Google Apps and a little bit on iOS, when you install the app, you get a splash screen that says what that app's tracking and reporting on you, and whether you still want to do it. But on other things, there's not necessarily much consumer take-up for it. For example, do not track features. Forget about the do not track built into browsers. They don't really do much, but there's third-party do not track. In fact, in our product, there's a do not track. You get very, very little user take-up on turning those on. Ad blockers. There's lots of the ads are, of course, based on what you've been personally doing. Are people turning those on? No. Personal VPNs, private VPNs, to kind of hide the IP address, what you're doing, and secure browsing. It protects you on all of that. But very few users actually buy those. So I think there's more clamor about loss of privacy than the desire to do something about it. Most solutions to do something about it requires you to spend a little bit of money. And people make that trade-off that, hey, I'm not going to get too outraged that I'm being tracked on what I'm doing. I'm not going to go the extra effort or expense of hiding my tracks. And they make that trade-off. I think, there was an old saying in the U.S. that grew out of saloon lunches a century ago. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And people realize that. Even on us, our security software is free. We're of course, not using any kind of personal information to monetize. But the fact that we've got a 220 million user footprint means we can collect security threat data from 220 million users and have a very, very good product and save an awful lot of money on our own security research, because we can basically crowdsource the security threats.
Okay. So if you had just one quick as a final thing, if you had something that you would see as kind of the next year or two as far as personal data, some kind of adjustment that you think people would take, or maybe none at all, what do you think, especially with kind of the volume of things that we keep hearing about data privacy, do you imagine any kind of shift over the next couple of years?
I think so. I think on a couple things. One, I think on advertising, targeting. I think that one kind of slipped in on users, and I think there's a lot of users who may not be fully aware about, is it just a coincidence that I was searching for some product 3 days ago that I'm now getting advertisements on that. I think the bells will start going off on that one, because I think it's one that users will consider a little obtrusive, that someone is remembering what I searched for. Especially imagine the situations in family computers where people are searching for things they don't necessarily want their parents or children to know about. Now you get advertisements on it. So I think that will be an issue. I think the next bigger thing is probably going to be the geographic tracking of everyone's devices, and then layering onto that the geographic tracking of cars. Like in the States, my wife has a Tesla. And people in the office think it's kind of funny that on my iPhone I can see exactly where my wife is, how fast she's driving, what she's doing, etc. And I think people are going to start getting a little concerned about their loss of geographic privacy, both their devices and their cars.
Okay. Well, Vincent, I wanted to thank you very much for coming on. You can stick around with us if you want. But the next couple of topics are going to be mostly kind of mobile geeky things. So you can feel free to duck out if you want, or stick around.
Thank you. Well, since it's probably 9:30 p.m., I'm probably going to duck out. Thank you very much. And
thanks.
Follow up, holler at me.
All right. I'll have a good night.
Take care. Bye.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think he does kind of raise a valid point about how many people make noise versus how few people actually do something about it.
Yeah, well, the people who make noise are the ones who at least should know better about this stuff. They know there's something wrong, but
right.
A lot of people that use the internet on a daily basis don't pay enough attention to this sort of stuff to know to be upset.
Yeah, I mean it's software license agreements all over again. It feels like for a large part of it, not entirely. I mean, there's obviously some situations that we've had recently where there's been clear expectations, and those expectations have been moved or shifted, like you said with moves at Facebook. That's a lot harder to predict, but on a high level, it does kind of feel like a lot of these people should kind of know better.
Hmm.
So you actually did a thing earlier today. You went and dug around for a bunch of IFTTT recipes, and you had actually found a ton that I hadn't even thought of yet. I thought that I had been pretty smart about IFTTT and using it a lot. We've talked about it a couple times here, but you've had some really clever ones that you found.
Yeah. So the thing about if this then that is that every time you think you found like the cleverest, coolest thing you can do with it, like there's another thing out there that's even cooler, and you'll feel just foolish when you realize you probably could have made it yourself before. But so for anybody that's not completely aware, IFTTT, or if this then that, is a service that lets you automate actions based on things that are happening in various cloud services or on your device locally. They just released an Android app a week or two ago, and so that opens up all these additional device channels. So you can use, for example, your location or the time of day or pictures being taken on your device. And you can trigger like notifications, and you can change settings on the phone. So it goes a little bit further than the iOS client did, because Android just gives apps a lot more control over things like that. So I think probably some of my favorites are with the messaging based on location. So you can have an SMS automatically sent, like if you stop by the store and you want to know if your significant other needs anything, it'll just automatically send an SMS like, "Hey, I'm at the store. Do you need anything?" And then let's see, if you want to save all the screenshots you take on your phone, you can have them automatically uploaded to a cloud storage service like Dropbox, which is handy because all of your regular photos are probably going up to Google Plus if you turn that on. But you don't want to like stick all those screenshots in with the regular photos. I mean, if you go into the Google Plus settings, you can turn that on, but it's just kind of a mess.
It is kind of messy, and it's funny because, especially with services like Google Plus's auto upload, iOS already does that, where like everything gets added to the photo roll, the camera roll for iOS. So like you take a screenshot and it gets added to Google Plus, but that doesn't happen on Android. And so yeah, that's one that I picked up right away, was the ability to shoot it up to Google Drive once a screenshot is taken.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of like really like simple things with this service that you could probably assemble with Tasker if you wanted to. I know that's like super huge in the Android community, but I mean Tasker is really, really hard. I mean, people are
Yeah.
really into it, but I've just never seen the appeal because it takes so long to do even the simplest thing, and it's just so easy to mess up. But
It's easy to mess up, and it's easy to be accidentally resource intensive.
yeah,
Performing simple tasks, it seems really simple when you compile it in Tasker, but then you realize that Tasker is now consuming 30%
it's
of
like
your battery.
it's like polling your accelerometer every 5 seconds,
Right.
keeping the device awake.
So I definitely get that, and that's usually my big argument when people say, well, why not just use Tasker? Is that it takes a lot of the responsibility away from the user. As far as making sure that it behaves correctly. And a lot of the things in IFTTT, you set them up so that, like the screenshot example, it doesn't start the upload as soon as you take a screenshot. It pulls that particular recipe, like, once an hour or once every 15 minutes, and bases it on that.
Yeah. I one other recipe that I had in there that I'm particularly fond of, like for me, it might not be important for everybody, is the Google Services Interruption notification, because that's super handy. Because Google, good for them, they have an RSS feed that'll tell you when something's wrong with one of their services, so you can just produce a notification on your device whenever something is broken, so you're not wondering what the hell's going on.
Awesome. Yeah, that was definitely a cool thing to come to Android, and then I went through and tore through a bunch of options. You and I have both been playing with the Galaxy S5 recently, and I've also been playing with the HTC One M8, and there's two things that those phones have in common, and that is that there's no such thing as a notification tray with either of those phones.
Yeah, it's real easy to overwhelm it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worse on like Sprint and Verizon Wireless. Sprint has that horrible Sprint Spark thing that just continues to spin in the notification tray.
Does it still do that constantly, or is it just like when it's moving data, or?
So it's anytime the data is happening, it spins.
Okay, yeah.
Boy,
that's
it's
unfortunate.
any amount of data. So like you've got LTE on and you get a message, or you have background data on or something like that, it just spins in your notification tray, and it's so painful to watch. But then NFC has its own special logo that has been in the last couple of generations of phones. The clock, I do not understand why HTC, Samsung, LG, and Motorola all feel the need to give me a special status bar notification over on the right-hand side that I can't do anything about when I use their stock clock app. If I have an alarm set there, regardless of when that alarm is, I get the little clock symbol up there, and there's no way to make it go away. So there was a bunch of things that I found. A lot of it is replacement apps, and everything up to rooting your phone and going with something that just doesn't use the notification tray for much of anything. Because you can definitely do that, but a lot of it is just paying closer attention to what it is that you have on.
Yeah, I mean, I have NFC off like all the time on the Galaxy S5 just because I hate seeing that icon all the time.
Yeah.
But like I leave it on Nexus devices because they don't have the icon. I don't know why they need to let you know NFC is on. It's not like it's going to destroy your battery or like people are going to hack into your phone from across the room. But
yeah,
I mean, it's just a useful feature.
I want to look and see. I think it's a licensing thing with the actual NFC group, because that's their logo. It's not like they made up their own logo like they do with the LTE stuff.
Yeah. So then I wonder why Google doesn't have to use it on stock devices.
It's definitely something worth looking into. I think it's possible that Google has their own NFC stack, and that's why they're not using it. I'm not 100% on that. It's something that I do actually want to look into now.
Yeah, but I mean, the only way to really like get rid of a lot of that clutter is to like root and like use something like exposed that you can get into the system and turn all this random stuff off that you don't want, or like just install a ROM that doesn't have any of it in the first place.
That's definitely the most efficient way of doing it. I've also found that there are one or two status bar replacements that don't require root access, that are just apps that you can install that are less terrible. I found that like Super Status Bar is pretty cool for doing a couple of things. It removes like the NFC token, and you can tell it to remove Bluetooth tethering, which is a problem for me because I'm constantly tethered to glass or to a smartwatch or to something like that. So it's yet another icon that's up in the tray. But Super Status Bar gets rid of a lot of that stuff, and as long as you're willing to go through and kind of pick through and choose a design that you like, then it ends up being pretty cool. But really, it's frustrating that it has to come to this. It feels a lot like 3 or 4 years ago when we were so obsessed with launcher replacements. When I went through and looked at all the different status bar things, it felt like I was doing that again.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that we're not going to have to continue stressing about this that much longer. I mean, the Galaxy S5, even compared to to the Galaxy S4, it feels like they've slimmed down the status bar stuff a bit. I mean, if I have like the volume on and don't have NFC on and not doing anything with Bluetooth, then it pretty much looks just like a Nexus device up there.
Right.
So, I mean, at least we're getting better.
It is definitely getting better, and that's cool. I have an app of the week this week. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up since we... actually, I'm sorry. We do have a question in the question and answer area from Luis Cortez. Would it be ridiculous to wear Glass and Moto 360 at the same time, or is it to be worn on separate occasions? Have not used a Moto 360 yet, so I can't say for sure. But judging from what we know so far, it would be a lot of redundant behavior. Because both devices are going to have Google Now. They're going to use Google Now differently. They're going to have notifications, and they're going to respond to those notifications a little differently. So it would probably be unnecessary to have them both on at the same time. I think it's one of those things where if you don't want a computer strapped to your face, then Android Wear is going to be your best bet. But I can't imagine a situation where it would be a good idea to have both.
Yeah, it's just going to be a question of how much do you want people to stare at you.
Right.
Almost not at all, or a lot.
Right. It's definitely how that's going to shake out. So the app of the week this week is a side-scroller shooter that I found on iOS. It is Warhammer 40k Carnage. I'm a huge fan of the Warhammer 40k games, and they took the Ultramarines chapter and gave them a side-scroller shooter that has just kind of really basic inventory control, and it's really just a kind of a silly side-scroller game that you can go and equip your weapons and basically take your character from a standard Ultramarine soldier all the way up to crazy power armor and lightning claws and stuff like that. So if you are a fan of side-scrollers or if you are obsessed with the Warhammer universe, then either one of them are fun options to check out. But otherwise, I think we're actually done for today, right?
Yeah. Oh, I have. I want to mention one thing on Android since you had an iOS app. This came out on iOS, I think 6 or 7 months ago. But Icebreaker, a Viking Voyage, is on Android now, which is a really fabulous game. It's only $1 right now, so it looks like this. I don't know if you can make that out, but if you are interested in games that are like neat physics puzzlers, you should definitely buy it because it's very cool.
I remember hearing about that, but I never actually checked it out. I'm actually gonna have to pick that up for my Android phone. So that is one more time. Let's get the name.
It's Icebreaker, a Viking Voyage.
Icebreaker, a Viking Voyage.
It was a Rovio Stars thing on iOS, but I think it's just published by the developer on Android.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if Rovio Stars is dead.
I think they just released a new Android thing the other day, but they're definitely not. They're not probably doing as much as they thought they would be doing.
Cool times. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me this week, Ryan, and I guess we'll see everyone next week.
Indeed. Thanks.